All right, everyone, welcome back into another props video. Going to be touching on the top prop bets here for this Thursday night showdown between the Seattle Seahawks and the San Francisco 49ers. Let's go ahead and get into it. And so getting into the game preview for this game, really the first thing that stands out to me is the amount of points that's projected via Vegas. So the game total is going to be set at 49.2. We can see that the Niners are going to be favored to win by 3.5 points as well. Now, it is important to call out that both teams are coming in off of, I would say, somewhat disappointing games, if you will. That being said, I would say the Giants are probably a little bit better than people really expected. Daniel Jones kind of balling out last week. And then it was just kind of a weird game for the Niners last week against the Cardinals. I would say Brock Purdy wasn't that sharp, but he wasn't terrible as well. So it'll be extremely interesting to see how both teams respond, how they show up in this game on a short week. In terms of injuries, guys, there's no real big reason to get into any sort of injury report here. George Kittle is questionable, but we're expecting him to play. So based off of what we have seen already this season, we're not really changing much, which is a little bit annoying. Last week, we had a really good week, just being able to gear in on some bets that were a little bit too low based off of some injuries and based off of some projected rolls. And so some of the bets that we're probably going to be on are going to be more game theory based bets. Do want to talk about the snap counts for each team as well real quickly. Looking at the Seahawks, nothing crazy here, guys. I would say maybe Zach Charbonnet gets closer to like 40% of the work here. Kenneth Walker did get 67% of the work. Both look good, I would say. They did somewhat struggle to get the run game going. I would expect them to try to get that going in this game. In terms of the tight end snaps, I was a little bit surprised that A.J. Barner actually got less work last week than the previous week, because in the previous week, the broadcast crew really made a point of emphasis about talking about him. And that was based off of coach speak. The coaches kind of made a point of emphasis to tell the broadcasting crew, and then he got 39% of the snaps. And so I guess it wouldn't be surprising to see maybe him get closer to 35% of the snaps in this game and Noah Fant receive a little bit less. But we are still expecting Noah Fant to be the top tight end. And then looking at the receiver splits, this is what makes kind of the Seahawks difficult, and you guys will see in a second here the Niners difficult as well in terms of prop betting, because these are the three players that we probably want to go in on the most. I would say 2 out of the 3 are going to be plays that are going to go off. It's just predicting which 2, especially in this high-scoring game, we want to go in on. And that's just because DK Metcalf is playing heavy snaps. He kind of had a sloppy fumble, but also a good play by the defender last week. JSN continues to look good. The issue with JSN is him and Tyler Lockett are kind of the same player. Tyler Lockett probably should have had a touchdown. Tyler Lockett has the tendency, last week that is, Tyler Lockett has the tendency to like fall down or prepare for a hit whenever he makes the catch. He did that last week where if he just like turns upfield, he probably scores. But Tyler Lockett looked great, I would say. And so that's the tough part about the Seahawks. Looking at the Niners, kind of the exact same thing. I think it's worth pointing out that Juwan Jennings certainly into more of the third down or the third receiver role for sure, like we would have expected at the start of the season. Deebo Samuel's good to go. Brandon Ayuk really had kind of a breakout game last week. And so, yeah, it is going to be kind of the three-headed monster once again in this offense between George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, or Brandon Ayuk. And it really is going to be choosing those 2 out of those 3 to have a good game. Maybe they all can, but in terms of like placing bets, it's probably going to be my approach. Tight end wise, again, Kittle's questionable. We're expecting him to play. He's going to play 90% of the snaps. Running back wise, Jordan Mason did see a little bit less of a workload last week, only 64% of the snaps. Isaac Guerrero got a little bit more work in that game. So, I mean, don't be surprised if that continues again. At the same time, I don't think we're too worried about Jordan Mason kind of losing his role, but that might make any over bet for Jordan Mason more difficult. And so let's start out here with the San Francisco 49ers. And the thing I want to point out is like right away, not big edges here on PrizePicks at least. We are seeing a decent prop line difference for the pass and rush yards for Brock Purdy. And we can see the projection data likes him to get 256 in this game. And so, yeah, given the fact that the underdog line is at 266.5, given the fact that the average sportsbook line is at 266, let's just round up to 267 there. I could see betting the under there, but again, that bet's only about a 53% likelihood to hit, so don't exactly love that. We had Jordan Mason, where I probably would favor the under here, but given this high-scoring game here as well, where it's 49 points, that's a lot of points, right? I would say he's pretty likely to get a chance to score a touchdown at least. I do kind of struggle with that one. And so really, guys, to me, what I want to look at And for what it's worth, guys, well, it's here. Kyle Juszczyk, with everyone active, I don't really see him having a big game with Deebo Samuel active, with George Kittle active, with Brandon Ayuk good to go. I don't really see him having a big role. He's going to be asked to block a little bit more. So that's just an interesting line. But really what I want to look at here for the Niners is going to be the fantasy score. And I think it's definitely worth calling out here that George Kittle's line is off on one of these two sites. And given the data points that we have coming in, I would actually think that it would be the PrizePicks line is a little bit too low, even though Vegas is suggesting that he might still get the under. I like the over here. I do. And I don't mind the idea of betting, again, like 2 out of the 3 players to get their over fantasy score. Now, we're not getting any Deebo Samuel fantasy score lines just yet. I'm a little bit confused as to why. But really, I think my approach, especially with the receivers, is going to be to do, for this instance, I would do Brandon Ayuk over fantasy score, George Kittle over fantasy score, and then another one do Brandon Ayuk over fantasy score. If we get Deebo Samuel's line, Deebo Samuel over fantasy score, and just kind of pair it like that, pair 2 out of the 3 together, and just hope that we're on kind of the optimal lineup. And then I'll do that with Seattle as well. But I think it's worth calling out that big prop line difference that we are getting for George Kittle. And so since we're not getting any fantasy score lines for Deebo Samuel, let's take a peek at the receptions. And those probably feel correct. Let's jump into underdogs, seeing if we're getting any edges there. I think you can make the argument that no, we're really not. It'd be betting George Kittle to get under his fantasy score. A little bit of that is predicated on him scoring a touchdown or not. And again, given the high scoring game, I think there's a better chance that he could. If you're looking to bet on like Jordan Mason over fantasy score, you would be doing that more so on underdog here, where it's not a big difference, but like 14.15 to 14.75, that can add up. That can be the difference between having a really good night or not having a good night. Not big edges here on underdog. And so honestly, the best route that we're probably going to have for this slate is betting on, it looks like George Kittle to get his over receiving yards. So the projection data likes him to get 56.16. So when we're looking at this, guys, it's about a 3% edge compared to how like FanDuel is valuing him for this game. They're giving him a line of 47.5 as a 50-50 split, whereas the average sportsbook line is slightly favoring the over slightly more at 48.5. Again, that's not a big difference, but that's probably the best route to go, honestly. I kind of want to take a peek at the reception lines because I do like the idea of betting on Brandon Ayuk to get over 4.5 receptions. He's coming in off of a massive game. Yes, it was kind of a point of emphasis again in the football, thus it wasn't a good Deebo Samuel game. At the same time, if the New York Giants were able to do what they did last week against that Seattle defense, where they got their tight end going a little bit, Darius Slayton could have had a bigger game. He had 2 bad drops. And Wendell Robinson was still able to get his work. I think the passing game is going to be something that we want to target more overs with rather than like Jordan Mason. And I am kind of curious, what's the best Brandon Ayuk line we have? Minus 120 on FanDuel for Brandon Ayuk to get over 4.5 receptions. I think I'd be okay with that. I like that one. And that is one that they have pulled from PrizePicks, which is annoying. And for underdog, they're giving us a reduced payout, which is super annoying. So with that, guys, we'll go ahead and jump on into PrizePicks and the Seattle Seahawks. So again, not really getting massive edges as it sits right now. Maybe closer to lock, we will once we get more sportsbooks given their lines. There's already enough in there, though, so it's not like that's going to change too much. Noah Fant's fantasy score is slightly off here by 1. If it's as high scoring as it's projected to be, I could see betting this over. Noah Fant is someone that ended up having 3 receptions last week. And again, if it's that high scoring, sure, he can get that over. I don't hate that idea. But again, I think the approach that I really want to go with the most is probably looking at a lot of the receivers for their overs. And again, I'm probably just going to be doing 2 out of the 3, which isn't the best content. I will say that. Just telling you guys, just bet a high volume and we'll hit one. That kind of seems like the slate. Now, I will say I do want to look at the receptions here. So we have Tyler Lockett at 4 receptions. I would want to be betting the over, especially if this game is going to be as high scoring as it's going to be. Great chance he gets to 4 receptions at the same time. 4 does seem to be a little bit too low. Now, if you're doing that, I wouldn't do Jackson Smith-Njigba to get over his. Shouldn't correlate, and it probably won't. And then DK Metcalf as well. I don't know, this line seems to be a little bit too low as well, but that's why for the Seahawks specifically, I definitely want to target more of their over fantasy score. At the same time, their lines are probably correct. If I had to choose one that I like the most, it is going to be Tyler Lockett, just assuming that his role is going to stay the same, especially in this high-scoring game. I would much rather bet the over. So I do want to just sort by fantasy score here. And all right, this is nice. So I personally like the over for Tyler Lockett here. And the fact that underdog is decently off with how they're grading this, or maybe PrizePicks is. Either way, this is a decent edge. And so instantly right away, this tells me that we have two bets where PrizePicks and Underdog seem to be a little bit off on. George Kittle, fantasy score, Tyler Lockett, fantasy score. And so instantly, I think we have a chance to do a middle with both those two, where we're betting the over on PrizePicks for both of those two, and then betting the under on Underdog for both of those two, hoping that the middle hits. Now, I always like to call this out. There is a slight calculation difference, obviously. Underdog does half point PPR scoring, PrizePicks does full point PPR scoring. So it's not like an exact 1-for-1 swap, but that is part of this. I am adjusting this for Underdog scoring based off of their Underdog line and vice versa. So with that, let's jump into Underdog. And yeah, that's going to be one of the better bets there on Underdog, is to bet his under. I don't mind the idea of Kenneth Walker to score a touchdown. I don't. Again, given this high scoring game, he's great. He's one of the better running backs in the league. I said that before his massive breakout. Didn't get much people saying good call on that, but it's all right. Yeah, so I don't mind him getting his over. If he does get his over, obviously that increases his likelihood of getting his over fantasy score. So if they take away that touchdown prop, guys, Underdog, or if they change the payout to it, and this fantasy score line has not adjusted at all, it's not a bad option. If you're thinking that you want to bet him to get his over rush plus receiving touchdown, then the fantasy score is going to work as well, because look at his rush yards line. Yes, there's a slight prop line difference here as well, 3 yards difference. But if he gets 60 yards rushing, and obviously he's going to get a little bit of work in the passing game. He had like 5 receptions last week, and he scores a touchdown, then he's going to get that over fantasy score. And then just while we're here, you can see why the DK Metcalf line and JSN lines have been bumped to 5. DK Metcalf has a 55% likely to get over 4.5 receptions. JSN has a 56% likely to get over 4.5 receptions. So that's why that's there. Kenneth Walker is likely to get 3 receptions for what that's worth, but I really wanted to look at Tyler Lockett. So let's take a peek there. Again, I think he has a good chance to get 4 receptions in this game. The average line is giving him a pretty heavy under of 4.5 receptions. I don't think it's hard to imagine this game being a shootout and him getting 5 receptions. There hasn't been a rhyme or reason as to like JSN getting heavier targets. I will admit JSN has looked good. JSN's a little bit more likely to take a hit than Tyler Lockett, but it just seems to be that's the player that's opened that game. I don't think there should be that big of a difference. And I don't hate the idea of betting the over here, 4.5 receiving or receptions. That'd be on Hard Rock Bet, BetOnline AG, or BetMGM. I'm okay with that there. But that does feel like we're forcing it. So with that, guys, let's go ahead and get into the bet or bets of the day on both sides. And just real quickly, for what it's worth, I do like this line for Zach Charbonnet is a good line as well for his over fantasy score. Did want to call that out. Over 6.5. I'm okay to do that as well. All right, so getting into the prize picks bet of the day, again, want to call out that the simple bets here for this slate, if you guys are only making like a bet or two, would be these two, and then do the exact opposite on Underdog. That's the route that you should be going. But what I like about this slate is that with these bets I'm running out, it's a 5 slip bet. The payout isn't reduced by doing these bets the way that I'm doing it. That's kind of the advantage of this. So it's a 49 for a game total. Could be a little bit higher scoring than that, maybe. I mean, that'd be pretty high, but regardless, these are good bets, especially given the fact that it's not reducing the payout. That's the key here. Like, it correlates with the game total, but they're not increasing or decreasing the total payout, which is awesome. Now, if you toss in a quarterback with that, it would. But this is more or less a bet on the game being correct. Now, if you want to go with Kenneth Walker, you can. But I mentioned what I'm going to be doing is I'll have a couple of bets with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf for over their fantasy score. And then I'll have DK Metcalf JSN. And I'll have Tyler Lockett JSN. I don't think that's as likely to correlate, but maybe. Then I'll do the same thing with the Niners. George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk like this one. George Kittle, Deebo Samuel. Once we get the fantasy score, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. Once we get that. And I'd be fine tossing in Kenneth Walker. It's going to be a volume day for me, and just hoping that one of those bets do hit. Maybe they all hit, maybe none hit. That'd be unfortunate. The game's just ugly. That'd be unfortunate. So in simple, for the Underdog bet, the best bet then would be to do this. Given the fact that PrizePicks is a little bit lower with their valuations for the fantasy score, I'm going to be attacking there a little bit more. Now, we do have some of those prop line differences. I would include that in a bet slip, but I expect those to be corrected by the time half of you guys watch these videos. Again, that's the tough part about getting out this content. But guys, that's going to be all for this video. I appreciate you guys being here. I did just come out with a video, a how-to video, more of a tutorial video of how to use all the NFL prop tools. If you guys have ever maybe been confused while you're watching this video, check that out. It will be one of the recommended videos on the end screen of this video. But before you guys leave, make sure to give a like and subscribe to the channel. If you guys want access to the tools that you saw in this video, head on over to 9to5sports.com. Get access to those for just $10 a month.